Do it again.
Boy, play, girls, win.
You're so smart.
My turn.
What's yours say, CeCe? Diva,
Diva,
princess,
princess,
mini boss,
Nicholas,
rock star,
star,
multitask.
dinosaur.
Good job.
Can we go back just a second? You talked about before that Bella walked in, though, to the bedroom. Can you tell us about that before you left?
Yeah, I was just getting the sheet off the bed, and she had walked in, and she had her little pink blanket with her. She's like, what's wrong? What's wrong, mommy?
And where was Shanann at that point?
Yeah, just pretty much on the bed, but she was face down.
Wrapped in the sheet?
And then the girls, right? Okay. You mentioned Bella was first. CeCe was first, okay. Where exactly was she when it happened?
In the back seat.
Okay. Was she just right next to Bella?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, so once again, was it a hand over her face? Was it?
It was a blanket over and my hand.
And then your hand. Okay. And then, so that just stopped her from breathing type thing? Okay. Did she struggle at all?
I don't think so, but I was blocking her face and my hand was right here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
You had one hand here and one hand over her mouth?
And we're just pushing her against the back of the seat type thing? Okay. What was Bella doing?
Sitting there next to her, she didn't know what was going on.
Okay. Could she see you? Okay.
She said, what happened to CeCe? Or she asked, is the same thing, the exact same thing that happened to me as CeCe?
Did she ask you that? Okay. So Bella's pretty smart. How does she sound when she wants to that, Chris?
So that soft voice she always had.
What exactly did she say?
Said that it's the same thing that happened to me as CeCe. And then I said, I don't even remember what I said. I don't know if I just said yes, like a horrible person, or if I just put that blanket over her too and did the same thing.
Same blanket, same way?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
She said, no, Daddy. And that's the next thing she said.
Did she say no, daddy, like, please, no, daddy type thing? Did she say, okay, don't do it?
She said, no, Daddy.
Okay. Same way, hand on neck, hand over mouth, or hand over blanket with the over mouth? Okay. Did that take a couple minutes?
I like it.
Okay. Then what?
I just noticed she had a couple spots like over her eye or something. And I picked her up. Same thing.
It begins in a room that's too quiet. A recorder blinks red. A clock ticks in the background. And across the table sits a man whose face the world can't forget. Chris Watts. The same man who once smiled in front of TV cameras, pretending to search for his missing family. But this time, there are no lies left. Just the truth he's run out of places to hide from. In his 2019 prison interview, investigators ask him what happened that night. The night he ended the lives of his pregnant wife, Sean N., and their two daughters, Bella and Celeste. First, his voice is steady. Then it cracks. Because when he begins to talk about Bella, something shifts. He admits she woke up. She saw everything. She watched as he wrapped her sister's small body in a blanket. And then she asked the question that still echoes in his mind. Is the same thing gonna happen to me as CeCe? He says her voice was soft, confused, trembling. He didn't answer. He couldn't. Because in that moment, even her innocence couldn't stop what he had already decided to do. And then came her final words, the ones that would haunt him forever. Daddy, no. He told investigators that he still hears her voice in his head every night. The sound of his daughter begging for her life, and his own silence answering back. No monster's roar. No rage. Just a quiet, terrible decision from a man who looked normal on the outside. If you believe that the darkest truths often hide behind ordinary smiles, make sure you're subscribed to True Crime Log. where we uncover the stories that still echo long after the cameras stop rolling. Because that's the part no one ever talks about. The fact that Bella saw what no child should ever see. And in her last moments, she still called him Daddy. The morning after the murders, the Colorado sky was still dark. The neighborhood was quiet, not yet aware of the horror that had already unfolded inside the Watts home. Chris carried 2 small blankets, 2 lunch boxes, and 2 sleeping girls who weren't sleeping anymore. Except one of them, Bella, was awake. He told investigators that she sat up in the back seat of his truck, rubbing her eyes, confused. Her voice, tiny but clear, broke the silence. "What's wrong with CeCe?" He didn't answer. He just kept driving 45 miles toward the oil field where he worked. Each minute stretched like a lifetime, and in that silence, Bella began to understand. That's when she asked the question no parent should ever hear from their child. "Is the same thing gonna happen to me as CeCe?" He told the agents he still remembers that moment. Her voice trembling, the sound of her breathing, the innocence mixing with fear. He didn't stop. He didn't comfort her. He drove on, staring at the road like a man possessed by something even he didn't understand. When they reached the site, he lifted CeCe's body from the truck and hid it in one of the oil tanks. Then he turned to Bella. She was crying now, holding her blanket, whispering, "Daddy, no." Those were her last words. And he admits that when he hears them echoing through his cell at night, they're as clear as they were that morning, not fading, not forgiving. If the story is already breaking your heart, hit like. Not for him, but for her, for Bella, because even in her final breath, she still trusted the man who betrayed her completely. Chris Watts told investigators he felt something leave him that day, as if whatever part of him was human just went dark. He buried their bodies and drove home. And for the rest of that day, he smiled on camera, asking the world to help him find the very family he had just destroyed. The next day, the cameras were already rolling. Neighbors gathered outside, whispering. Reporters held microphones like weapons, waiting for a story. And then he stepped out. Chris Watts, the man whose face the world would soon recognize as the picture of calm evil. He stood on his porch, his voice steady, rehearsed. He begged for help to find Sean and the girls. He talked about how much he missed them, how he just wanted them home. But his eyes told another story, the kind that chills you even when you don't yet know why. Investigators were already watching. They saw the way his body language didn't match his words. They saw how he smiled at the wrong moments, how his breathing changed when their names came up. And in the background of that now infamous interview, a neighbor's security footage caught something even stranger. Chris pacing, fidgeting, glancing toward his truck like it still held his secrets. By the time he returned inside, the detectives were waiting. They asked for his phone, for Shanann's phone, for his story one more time. And each answer dug him deeper, because the truth was already leaking through his calm facade. Just like the oil tanks where his daughters lay hidden. If you're still here watching, it's because you already know something's wrong. Not just with the crime, but with how someone so ordinary could stand there and lie to an entire world. Subscribe to True Crime Log for stories that expose what hides behind the smiles we trust most. That evening, one of the detectives whispered to another, "He's lying. I can feel it." And they were right, because just hours later, during his polygraph test, Chris Watts' mask began to crack. He failed every single question. And for the first time, the calm man on camera started to unravel. They asked him again, "What happened to your family, Chris?" He lowered his head, and for a brief moment, you could almost see the truth clawing its way to the surface, dark, quiet, and ready to finally be seen. Inside the interrogation room, the air was thick, heavy with silence and disbelief. Chris Watts sat with his hands clasped, eyes down, as investigators pressed him again and again. The polygraph had failed. The lies had fractured. There was nowhere left to hide. When they told him to just tell the truth, his voice cracked. He asked for his father. And in that moment, as his dad walked into the room, the mask shattered. He whispered, almost trembling, "She's gone. They're all gone." At first, he tried to twist the story, claiming Sean and had hurt the girls, and that he reacted in rage. But investigators had already seen too much. The calm demeanor, the digital trail, the contradictions, none of it added up. And then, finally, after hours of silence and denial, the truth spilled out. He killed Sean and first. Then he turned on his daughters. He admitted driving their bodies to the oil field, hiding his wife in a shallow grave, and forcing his daughters' small bodies into separate tanks. And when he said those words, Bella asked if the same thing was going to happen to her as CeCe. Even the agents in the room went quiet. They asked him what she said last. He paused. Then he whispered, "Daddy, no." That was the moment that broke even the hardest hearts in the room. Because it wasn't just murder. It was betrayal, witnessed by the most innocent eyes imaginable. If you believe stories like this remind us of how fragile trust can be, hit like and share this video so her voice is never forgotten. Because Bella's final words deserve to echo longer than his lies ever will. Chris Watts' confession wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, and that's what made it horrifying. Every syllable dripped with the weight of something he could never undo. And when investigators finally left the room, one of them said what everyone was thinking. Evil doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers. Years have passed since that August morning in Frederick, Colorado. But inside a small cell at Dodge Correctional Institution, time doesn't move the same way. Chris Watts sits alone. No cameras. No interviews. Just the sound of his own breathing and, according to him, the voice that never leaves. In his 2019 prison interview, he told investigators that Bella's words, "Daddy, no," still echo in his head. That sometimes, when he closes his eyes, he sees her face, hears her crying, and feels her tiny hands pushing against him as he took her last breath away. He said her voice is what keeps him from sleeping. That even when he prays, he can still hear her whisper, "Why, Daddy?" But here's what haunts people most. He doesn't sound like a man seeking forgiveness. He sounds like a man trapped in his own mind, replaying the crime like a broken film reel he can't shut off. Each night, he claims, the same images come back. The truck, the field, the tank, and Bella's voice. Always her voice. Some believe it's guilt. Others think it's something darker. The soul refusing to let him forget what he did. Maybe it's both. Because even monsters can be haunted, not by their victims, but by the realization that they were once loved by the very people they destroyed. If the story stayed with you, if Bella's voice still echoes in your mind the way it echoes in his share this video, let her name be louder than his guilt. And subscribe to True Crime Log, because here, we don't glorify the darkness. We expose it. As the lights in his cell flicker out, the world outside forgets his name a little more each day. But in the quiet, somewhere between sleep and waking, he still hears her, the same small voice that once called him Daddy. And this time, there's no way to make it stop.